I don't mean to like sound like Stephen A, but like the Jets got rid of Sam Darnold. Like he's not a bona fide scrub, but he's on his way there.
Adam Gase is like the Grim Reaper of the NFL. He kind of just like destroys everything in his path. Look, Mac Jones in number 3 is a little crazy in my opinion. I don't think Mac Jones is top 10 material. Better be a top 3.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keeping Score with Laney and Dylan, a podcast show dedicated to bringing analysis of Rutgers sports and sports around the country. I'm Laney.
And I'm Dylan.
And in today's episode, we welcome our sports writers, Ellis and Jack, to discuss the end of March Madness and our predictions for the upcoming NFL draft. So we are here once again, lads, talking about all things sports. We can just jump right into it. Let's go right into March Madness. It was madness indeed. That game was crazy. Buzzer beater. I loved it personally. I was rooting for Baylor just because I love an underdog. My whole life I've been supporting underdogs. So, that's just how it is. But that was just what an ending. What an ending to that. Gonzaga goes down.
I definitely think the Final Four was, interesting. Baylor and Gonzaga, the tournament was laced with upsets. You had Oral Roberts going to the Sweet 16, but it was kind of interesting to me how, the tournament could be filled with upsets and you still kind of had a final, which I think a lot of people picked in Gonzaga Baylor. And I think it really shows how good Baylor is that they, were able to defeat this undefeated Gonzaga team, one of the highest analytically rated teams ever. And, Baylor kind of came in, they played really aggressive defense. They looked faster than them. They out-hustled them. And ultimately, they made Jalen Suggs look human, which he didn't in the UCLA game. So that was important. And, yeah, good for Baylor. That program has been through a lot. They pretty much almost had their program taken away 20 years ago. And here they are now winning a national championship, one of the best rebuilds in the history of American sports. So very impressive. Good. Congratulations, Baylor.
I think this shows that how hard it really is to go undefeated, because watching the game, Baylor dominated, but I didn't even just from purely watching it, I didn't think Gonzaga was that bad. I think it was more emphasis on Baylor just playing great basketball. They were hitting all their shots, especially from 3, and they're playing really tough defense. You're just not going to beat a team that's doing that, especially a team like Baylor. And I think this just goes to show, again, how hard it is to be undefeated in the whole season, because you not only have to be on every single night you're playing, but the other team can't be on, fully on as well. I don't think Gonzaga had their best game. I don't think it was their worst game either. Suggs, I wouldn't even say he was fully neutralized. He dropped 23. He wasn't great, but I think he did very good. But it just shows how hard it is to be undefeated for a season. And for Suggs, you got to feel bad for him. He put his whole heart into that semifinal game. He played really, really hard. He lost his high school football finals, state finals. He couldn't get to his basketball because of COVID, and now in college he loses the finals again. Kind of feel bad for him, but it was a great season by Gonzaga. I don't think this really takes away from their amazing season, but Baylor just came out and they look like world beaters.
Yeah, I was happy we ended up getting the national final that we did, Gonzaga and Baylor, because over the entire course of the college basketball season, who were the best 2 teams? Gonzaga and Baylor. And March Madness, as crazy as it is, it always has this way of making the championship be, one or the 2 best teams, or the best teams playing against each other. And that's what we saw here. In terms of the Final Four, Baylor, they did a really good job controlling Houston. It's tough for me to talk about Houston still, considering what happened with Rutgers. But yeah, that was a blowout. Not much to say there. And of course, Gonzaga and UCLA, one of the all-time games we'll ever see. In terms of the national championship, Baylor really impressed me. They came out on a mission. They defended well. They looked like football players out there, quite frankly, by the way they defended. Really physical, really pushed around Gonzaga. Jalen Suggs got into foul trouble earlier in the game. That was a big problem for Gonzaga early. But overall, just really impressed by Baylor. Baylor went out and won that game. The talk will be about Gonzaga and how, they were so close to the perfect season. They were so close to that, and they didn't get the job done. Don't mean anything about without the ring, but all the credit to Baylor. They came out and they took that championship. No credit should be abstained from Baylor. Congratulations to them.
I love that. Don't mean a thing without the ring. I think that's a Michael Jordan quote. That's awesome.
It was popular when the Warriors blew their 3-1 lead.
I was gonna say I remember that with the 73-9 Warriors.
I bet heavily on the Big Ten, and that one as well, as you probably saw during the tournament. That was not a great bet. Us in the Big Ten went out pretty quickly.
Yep.
I said something little briefly about the UCLA game, a little buzzer beater. I believe that was the buzzer beater game, and it was just, again, love it. I love the theatrics of it. So if y'all want, we can move on to NFL draft. But let's start with the Sam Darnold thing. As myself, I am a Jets fan, near and dear to my heart. I know the Panthers things that surround me. You can't, for the listeners, you can't see, but I'm in a room filled with Panthers things. My boyfriend is a huge Panthers fan. I could not be happier with the trade personally. He could not be more upset. I think it's a little too early to necessarily say who won the trade. Darnold could go into Carolina and thrive. I know the Jets, I love to say, are where good players go to die. So I don't know. It's a little too early. As of right now, I'd like to say the Jets won the trade. We got to kind of get him off our backs. I wanted to believe in Sam. I really did. I like Sam a lot, but I just didn't think he was the right fit. How are y'all feeling about that trade?
It's obvious the Jets won the trade. I mean, I don't mean to sound like Stephen A, but the Jets got rid of Sam Darnold. He's not a bona fide scrub, but he's on his way there. I mean, he's played at such a low. I don't understand why Jets fans all together have a common tendency to just big up you got it wrong. You got the draft pick wrong.
Well, Dylan, the reason that we like to hype up players is because we have nothing. So when we get anybody, we like to build them into Tom Brady. It's just how we operate.
So I think the Jets are just in such a better position with Zach Wilson than they're going to be with what is to become of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm a little torn here because I have been one of the. I have a friend that's a Jets fan, and from day one I was like, I don't love Sam Darnold. I just don't love him, the best vibe. So I've never been the biggest Sam Darnold fan. That said, I think Jets win, but barely. And I think the media said the Panthers, this was awful trade for them. But you have to consider the Panthers situation. They're in a place where they have a very talented team, but they don't have a quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater is good, right? They need a quarterback. Giving up a second for Sam Darnold is high. But what's good now is they can evaluate their team properly. If Sam Darnold now has all the weapons, no excuses, maybe he can prove us all wrong and be really good. And then all of a sudden, this Panthers team is a top contender in the NFL. But if they're bad, I mean, if Sam Darnold's bad, they kind of have the same record I believe they had last year, and they only lose a second-round pick. So I don't think in 4th and 6th, but I'm not kind of that influential. So I don't think it was even that bad of a trade for the Panthers because it's time for them. Teddy Bridgewater is not the answer. Sam Darnold has more potential than Teddy Bridgewater, no matter what you think of him, even if he won't fulfill that potential. So I think the Panthers actually didn't come out as such bad losers as everyone said they will. This is also partly because I don't love Zach Wilson. I kind of have the same vibes as Zach Wilson as I have Sam Darnold, which is a separate issue that we might talk about later. But overall, I think the Jets won, and I like the trade for the Jets, but I don't love Zach Wilson, and I think this is good for the Panthers because they can evaluate their team. Now they have a higher chance of winning. NFL is about winning the Super Bowl. This gives the Panthers a higher chance of winning the Super Bowl than with Teddy Bridgewater. Also, higher chance of failing, but who cares if they're barely miss the playoffs every year with Teddy Bridgewater?
Look, I mean, it's not – you can't say who won, who lost a trade without them playing a single game yet for the team. That's just my personal opinion. And I think it'll end up being good for the Panthers, and I think it'll end up being good for Sam Darnold as well. Do you guys, by any chance, know how many wins the Jets have without Sam Darnold since he entered the league?
Not many, but they don't
No.
have that many with him since he's entered the league either.
The bar is really low. The bar is really low.
It's not even that many. He's got zero. They got zero. They got 0 wins without Sam Darnold throughout these past 3 years. So I think it's good for Sam Darnold to finally get a new change of scenery in the league. I think that'll really benefit him. And in terms of the Jets, they're on a beeline to draft Zach Wilson. No matter what you think of him, they're going to draft him, it seems like, at this point. And, there's a new culture with the Jets. Robert Saleh's the head coach now, so maybe they could, rectify whatever they had in the past or do something different than what they've seen. And I've kind of gotten the sorry, I lost my train of thought. But what I've seen from different sources is that Adam Gase is like the Grim Reaper of the NFL. He kind of just like destroys everything in his path, and Sam Darnold has had him for the past couple of years. So maybe he can get some more success with Matt Rule.
I wish all the best for Sam personally. I hope he can go into Carolina and thrive. I am so numb to the Jets' just horribleness. I fully expect them to take Wilson and then just destroy him and then have him go somewhere and later on in his career and like thrive, because that's just what I'm used to personally. But I definitely do agree. I don't think we will know who won the trade until further down the line. I think it's a little too early to call it.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great point Jack made about Adam Gase, because look at Tannehill. Look at what he did to his career. So I think Sam Darnold could easily see the same success. Adam Gase has been living off his reputation of Peyton Manning for years now, where everyone knows he's a bad coach. Just the Jets, I guess, forgot to do their scouting when picking their head coach. He is a really, really bad head coach. Peyton Manning called his own plays anyway, so he really just sat there and did nothing. So he's a really bad head coach, and he ruins everyone. So Sam Darnold, I still think has potential.
Sam Darnold, less than sign, double less than sign, actually, Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is extremely talented.
You're only saying that, though, because he went to the Titans and played well.
I mean, he also has Derrick Henry. And, I think I would be a decent quarterback running play action with Derrick Henry.
Darnold has Christian McCaffrey, also has Moore, and has Robbie Anderson. So he has all the weapons now.
I didn't like Darnold. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerdy football fan. I watched them blow out USC his senior year. I watched him lose. I watched him play terribly. And I was like, I would not draft this guy. And I don't know if it's the system, but I don't see him becoming this world beater quarterback that people suggest he has the potential to be. I see him as a below average guy at best. I don't see him being even average in the NFL, honestly.
Well, Ellis, you bring up the point about weapons. I saw something the other day when this trade went down that Sam Darnold hasn't had a Pro Bowl receiver, Pro Bowl weapon at all in his career. So he'll go to Carolina. He'll have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, who's also a tremendous receiver. He'll have Robbie Anderson, who we had in New York for a little bit. So there's some built-up connection there. We'll have DJ Moore. Carolina has a little bit more options than the Jets. So hopefully, like I said before, the change of scenery really helps them there.
I believe I also saw something about how when Robbie and Sam were playing together in New York that Anderson was one of his main targets. And I think them being back together, I think will go really well for him.
Now that you mentioned that, I had Robbie Anderson on my fantasy team, and I went to some Jets games that year, and that was one of the most frustrating, because Sam Darnold knew, they had a good connection, but all Adam Gase would send him on is the same streak route every single play with one slant route mixed in out of 10. Every time, every game, it's the same thing. And then he would never get the ball except for the one streak route, once every 3 games it worked. That was because Robbie Anderson's really talented. That was the most frustrating connection season, and I blame Adam Gase, and he ruined my fantasy team.
Adam Gase, I think, has taken something from all of us at one point in time. You're not alone. I think he's
just given me memories of laughter, like a child.
Well, I'm so glad that you've had a positive experience with Adam Gase. I personally haven't. I think it's taken years off of my father's life. So whatever.
I'll just remember the play last season when they ran a bomb blitz, a full-out blitz on a Hail Mary attempt, and the Raiders won the game. That's
Greg
what I'll
Williams
remember.
sacrificed his job for the chance of Trevor Lawrence. That man deserves a statue outside of MetLife.
Whatever. Speaking of quarterbacks, the quarterback situation going into the NFL draft is always interesting, as interesting as it always is. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is probably going to go number one. He will be the first quarterback off the board. I think we've kind of come to a consensus already that the Jets will be going for Wilson. Where do you all think the rest of them will land? I personally, in my opinion, looks like the 49ers did trade up and look for the third pick, if I remember correctly. I believe that was something with the Dolphins, and it looks like they want Mr. Trey Lance. Looks like they're going to be going for him, at least in my opinion. I think after that, it might be Justin Fields, and then Mac Jones might go at the very last of all of them. Let me know what y'all's opinion on the whole quarterback situation is.
Yeah, I don't get the Mac Jones hype whatsoever. I mean, when I think of Mac Jones, I think of like the simulated man you get on Madden, like literally like the intro character, like my quarterback intro character, literally Mac Jones. That's all he and I'm sure he's not going to be a bad. You know what I think of? AJ McCarron. He's not going to be a bad quarterback. I don't think Mac Jones will ever be bad. He can start a few games, but he's just going to be a very quality. AJ McCarron's a very quality bench player, but no one wants to draft AJ McCarron in the top 10 picks. People draft AJ McCarron in the third, fourth round. Mac Jones maybe belongs in the second round, so I don't know what he's doing. That's just on Mac Jones. And then on Justin Fields, I have the exact opposite problem. Sure, he went to Ohio State. I get the problems, but this is also more me vibe check and watching his games. I just think Justin Fields is a great QB. And I know it's hard with Ohio State, and I know people question all of a sudden his desire to play. I mean, he played pretty much on a dead hip in the semifinal game against Clemson, so I don't know what they're talking about. But I just really like Justin Fields. So I think those two stocks for me need to flip.
Ellis, I agree that Mac Jones is being overhyped. I think the Niners are looking at him. I think Shanahan and their GM both went to his pro day. So I think they're both pretty interested. But yeah, I think Mac Jones got to throw to a Heisman, and he had 4 first-round wide receivers pretty much who are – 2 of them are making an impact in the NFL right now, and 2 of them are set to make an impact in the NFL in a few months. So, yeah, I don't really think very highly of him either. I remember, like, the early mock drafts had him going to Washington in the middle of the first round, which made sense. I mean, at the time, that seemed like a good fit for him, but I don't understand all this. He should go number 3. If the Niners are going to take anyone, they should take Justin Fields.
Look, Mac Jones in number 3 is a little crazy in my opinion. I don't think Mac Jones is top 10 material. Better be a top 3. Yeah, I think Justin Fields and Trey Lance are two of the quarterbacks that 49ers should consider. I thought their trade up was really interesting because it kind of like signals maybe what they're thinking about Jimmy G in the future. Maybe they don't think that he could be the guy moving forward. I'm really interested in the 49ers. That's really the main thing with any of these quarterbacks outside Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, who pretty much locked in at 1 and 2.
But also, I think, and this happens every year, and this is more like just kind of a critique of the draft in general. And it's hard not to because of how QBs are so relevant in the game. But there's a lot of good players that are going to slide down the draft because everyone's talking about QBs. The offense, especially this year on the offensive side. The defensive side, it's a little bit sketchy compared to most drafts, but especially on the offensive side, there's just a lot of good players that are going to slide down, go to teams, and are going to get overlooked by the media just because QBs are the highlight. And I get that, and it's understandable. Like, it's not really like I'm not mad at it, but I just think it's important to highlight players like Jamar Chase, who's really good, Kyle Pitts, Rashawn Slater, Sene Puel. I'm not sure if I'm saying Sewell. I think so. It's just I always feel like every draft the really good position players get overlooked.
Yeah, I'm looking at a mock draft right now on NFL.com, and they have the Bengals passing up on Penei Sewell, which I think is absurd because Joe Burrow has already had a major injury because no one can protect him on the Bengals. It's absurd to me that they'll pass on a guy like Penei Sewell, who's like seen as one of the best offensive lineman prospects ever. I don't agree with that at all.
You guys kind of touched on it a little bit there, but you can just like overrated, underrated players. I think you all seem to have very strong opinions on Mac Jones. I'm personally not the biggest football person, so I can't really speak too much on what I feel about Mac Jones, but you all seem to be very passionate about that, which, I appreciate. I appreciate some passion. Speaking of passion, personally, if you guys are down to go into this next little part, this is something that I think is very important that gets talked about. I think it gets talked about a lot, but I think it gets talked about on a surface level, maybe a little bit. But the Deshaun Watson fiasco that's going on right now. Personally, here, I'll let you know what I think about it. I think he should never be able to play football again. I feel that way about most players that either are accused/convicted of domestic violence. I think most major sports leagues should look at their policies when it comes to that. I could go on a soapbox about that. I just don't think they have any right playing professional sports. Kids are looking up to you. It's just, why put them in any position where they could make money, be in a position of like power. A lot of these guys get to this situation and they think that they're powerful, and he's like, all right, yeah, I'm this hotshot football player, let me go take advantage of some girls. Anyways, how do you guys feel about the situation?
He's not going to play another snap ever again. He's not going to play another snap ever again. That's pretty much all that like needs to be said. I think at this point, the conversation has changed from the early part of the conversation where people like had doubts. Like, I don't think anyone has doubts anymore. Like, Deshaun Watson is like a bad person. And he is never going to play another snap in the NFL ever again, which, is a shame because he was a very talented quarterback. It's a shame he had to do this to, end his own career like that. But, if you're doing things like this, you should be punished, and you should not be allowed to make hundreds of millions of dollars when you're going to do things like this. So
I think Laney made a good point about positions of power and influence. And it's important to recognize that for a lot of kids and adults, really, but let's focus on the kids for now. A lot of kids, like, they look up to a lot of these athletes, whether it be Deshaun Watson or Tom Brady or whoever. And if you're exhibiting this behavior, I mean, people will still look up, like, if you're exhibiting this behavior, then you're saying it's okay for the kids to look up to you to also exhibit this behavior, and hence a really sick culture is started where this behavior is allowed. And so, I mean, I obviously agree with you guys. He shouldn't really be able to play another snap because of the power that he has currently and shouldn't have, and also because there's kids that look up to him and he let them down. But it's important to make sure that kids no longer look up to him, because obviously what he did was awful.
Look, I'm a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. With that said, though, it's really not looking good for Deshaun Watson. Like, 22 women who have filed lawsuits against him is really alarming, and it's really sad. And it makes you think, what other athletes are kind of abusing their power kind of like this. Because before this entire situation occurred, we kind of had us as fans kind of had this assumption that Deshaun Watson is this really good guy. Like, he built up from nothing, went to Clemson, was an incredible quarterback then, was really like the model of, being a really nice guy. And, then this comes out, really shocking considering what, he was made up to be. throughout these past couple of years that, he's been in a spotlight. 22 women is just unbelievable. I don't think you can make something like that up. I don't think 22 women could be in a conspiracy. That doesn't make sense. And even today, Ashley Solis came out. She was the first of 22 women accusing Deshaun Watson. And she came out and made a statement today. So, it's really not looking good for him. And I'm really disappointed in everything that's happened with him because, really just makes you wonder, what are other athletes doing that maybe we haven't seen or maybe we haven't heard about. It's just really disappointing all around.
The NFL, I was going to say the NFL needs to get their, together, because this is an ongoing problem from a lot of their players. And it's partly because of the nature of the game, but I also think it's partly just because Roger Goodell couldn't give less. Obviously, I think he cares when it happens. He couldn't. Let me say this: Roger Goodell couldn't care less about preemptive action against it. So yeah, this obviously this is Deshaun Watson awful, but the NFL also needs to look in the mirror a little bit themselves.
I agree with that. I think again, like I said earlier, I think most professional sports leagues need to look in the mirror and look at what they're doing and look at what they are honestly promoting. And whatever. Personally, I think definitely me being a woman that wants to work in sports, I might have a little bit more of an emotional stake in the game. But even just this year, things have been coming out in baseball, like left and right, about just like people in positions of power taking advantage of that power and preying on women that don't have as much power as them. It's really gross. It's very upsetting, and it doesn't make me feel safe, or most female sports fans or women that work in sports in general feel safe, because if the leagues that we root for, work for, and love aren't, doing all that they can to make sure that we're safe, then what are we doing, but alas, I don't think any of this will ever end. I think it's going to be a continuous thing. I think for as long as human beings are alive, things like this are going to happen, which is so sad. But yeah.
One more thing, we just got to keep tabs on how this develops. Obviously there's a lot more to play out, but Deshaun Watson is just really disappointing. And like you said, Laney, you see a lot of stuff coming out now about how people in power are taking advantage of people who aren't in power or maybe under there. So it's just disappointing. We all need to open our eyes to it.
And that's all for today. Make sure to join us next time on Keeping Score for more sports updates. And make sure to follow the Daily Targum on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more content.